Hi everyone. Thank you very much for watching. And today I have the privilege of talking with Steve Judge, who is a two-time world champion in triathlon for those with disabilities. And as well as that, he is a European champion and a five-time British champion in the same sport. And additionally, is also a published author and a professional public speaker. And last but not least, he is the president of the Yorkshire region of the Professional Speaking Association. So that is a lot of accolades. Now, Steve has a very, very inspirational story to tell us today about what he's overcome in his life to not only get where he is, but become the person that he is, which is equally amazing. And I'm very, very privileged to speak with him. So, Steve, it's over to you. But thank you very much, by the way, for taking the time to have a chat with me today. I'm very, very grateful for that.
Oh, not at all, Liam. It's a privilege. It's lovely to be here because you're giving me the opportunity to share my story. And that's one of the main things I want to do is share my story to as many people as possible. My why, as I would call it, my goal that I thrive for is to help people, to inspire others and to motivate many. So by you giving me this opportunity to speak on this podcast, this interview and sharing it out, it completes my why. So that's really good. And well done on the introduction. There was a lot to cover there. I've heard you do interviews with boxers and they've got so many numerous belts and everything. So you've obviously done your research on me. So that's great. And yeah, I'm looking forward to sharing my journey. Where would you like me to start?
Well, I think a good place to start would be at the beginning. Now, not that it's necessarily the beginning of your life, but it's certainly the beginning of where your life changed completely. And that is the accident, that is the car accident that you experienced at age 28, I believe.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think that's a good place to start because, for those watching this that haven't come across you before, I'd like to start with that aspect of the story and actually what actually happened to sort of send your life in a completely different direction. So over to you on that one with the car accident and with what happened there.
Yeah, no problem. And I might dot back to my childhood sometimes because sometimes that comes into it. But the accident, you're right, it happened in 2002. I was driving on the outskirts of Sheffield. It was a rainy day. The rain was coming down and there's rain on the road and my car skidded. It just lost control. There's nobody else on the road. There's nobody to blame for it. I wasn't speeding or anything. My car just skidded and it went sideways and I couldn't do anything about it. And I just remember it skidding round and heading towards this pole and just gripping onto the steering wheel as I could see this pole getting closer and closer and kind of just bracing myself for impact. And then suddenly it hit, it all went black. I was knocked out. And when I came to, everybody came to save me. The police, the ambulance, the fire brigade, even a helicopter up above. And they had to cut me out of the car. And it took them over an hour to cut me out of the car and drag me out along with my legs and rush me to a nearby ambulance and then onto the hospital, the Northern General Hospital in Sheffield. And when I got there, they saved my life. They gave me lots of blood and they took me into the operating theatre. And I was in there for about 8 hours. When I came out of the operating theatre, I remember just waking up and just feeling absolutely terrible. I felt really groggy, really static, I think is the word. I couldn't move. My legs were really, solid. I didn't know what was going on down there. And it was around that time when the surgeon was doing his rounds and he came over to my bed and he said, "How are you feeling, Mr. Judge?" And I said, "I feel terrible. I feel absolutely terrible." He said, "Well, I just want you to know that the operation was successful. We managed to save your life. We managed to save your legs. But I'm afraid with the severity of the injuries that you've sustained, you may never walk again." Now, I think when you hear words like that, these are words that you don't expect to hear when you wake up in the morning, And I think there's two ways of looking at it. There's certain two ways you can react, and that's a fight or flight. Everybody's heard about the fight or flight. For me, the flight would have been I could have just rolled over in bed and just given in, as in, okay, I guess I'll never walk again. But I also picked up on, he said, "You may never walk again." And that may said to me that there's a chance there. But also, going back to the words that he said, it made me feel really angry, I think, because he didn't even know who I was. To him, I was just a patient. He didn't know my background or anything like that. And my background, I was a runner. I loved running. When I was a kid, when I was 10 years old and running through the woods in the back of our house and running through the quarry, I used to have a little Jack Russell dog. We used to go running together. I used to run with the family. I'd run anywhere and everywhere. I did 10Ks, I did marathons. So running was really important. For him to take that away from me, it was almost like, how dare you? And it was a bit like waving a red rag to a bull. I felt really angry, and I guess that's the fight. The fight to me said, I'll prove you wrong, inside my head. I'll show you what I can do. And just give me the tools. And the tools were my legs. And when I looked at my legs and learned out how bad they were, I could understand why he said that I may never walk again. My left leg had been wrenched apart at the knee, so that my knee had just been ripped out, all the ligaments broken apart. My right leg was actually worse than that. My right leg had been partially amputated. So 4 inches of bone had been knocked out and literally discarded, thrown in the bin. They'd squashed my leg together, connecting the leg together and held it all together with a big metal cage. That's what I woke up to. My leg was 4 inches shorter than my left leg. So it was now time for me to take action. Not only take action, but take responsibility, take ownership, be accountable for what I had to do. And that, as we all know, anybody who's been through some kind of trauma like that is rehabilitation, physio. And so that's what I had to do. Now, first of all, I had to survive, and that's very important. Anybody who's been to hospital knows that the first thing you want to do is get out of hospital. Eat as much food as you can, get the energy, get out of hospital, get home, start the physio. And so that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to start doing that. And, I was always very keen on doing as much physio as I could, doing exactly what they told me to do. I remember at one point I was doing 22 different exercises. And I still remember saying, what more can I do? What more can I do? What more can I do? For me, this is about having a goal. For me, this is about, working towards that goal. My goal was to stand again and walk again. So what did I need to do to get there? Now, one thing I had to do was lengthen my leg out. I had to twist bolts on my cage every day for over 100 days, slowly stretching the skin and the muscle and wrenching the bone apart. And that actually formed a gap to form 4 inches of gap. And the thing is with that is that there was no bone in the middle. So I was like, well, when do I take this cage off? And they said, well, when the bone's grown back. I said, well, okay, well, how long will that take? And they're like, well, it just depends, Mr. Judge, on the individual. I said, well, I'm doing as much as I can. I'm drinking as much milk as I can and eating as much cheese for the calcium. And they're like, no, Mr. Judge, no. It's not about drinking cheese and eating milk. It's about using your bone so that encourages it to grow back. And I said, well, what do you mean? He says, you've got to stand on your leg. You've got to walk on your leg. You've got to trust the cage. Now suddenly we're coming into a mindset thing. For me to put weight through my leg, even though there's no bone in it, putting all my weight to this metal cage, it's just like blew my mind. But that's what I had to do. So first of all, starting off in the Zimmer frame and then slowly moving off that onto the crutches, walking around the house, walking outside the house. But I needed to do more. Again, what more can I do? What more can I do? I went down to the local park where it was flat and I could drive down there my hand controls car and start walking around the park, working from bench to bench, sitting down. I was in tears. At times I'd fall down and I'd cry and I'd pick myself up. And I could see the pins in my cage that were bleeding as I was doing all of this. But that's what I had to do. And when I got home, I collapsed and I was in so much pain and discomfort. And the next day I was probably exhausted and I rested. And the day after that, I got up and I did it all again. Because that's what I needed to do to work towards my goal. We talk about going out your comfort zone and things like that. The pain that I had to put myself through, my mindset that I had to change and adapt and adopt to make sure that I can push myself round that park to those park benches was extreme. But that's what I did. And over the next year and a half, cutting the story really short, over the next year and a half, my bone did grow back. And eventually they were able to release the cage and I was able to stand again and walk again. The problem is, as much as I've done as much as I could, my goal had been to get back to normal. And I realized at that point that there's no such thing as normal. I was very different to what I was before the accident to what I was now. And this is a big message that I pass on to my audiences, to the adults, but more specifically to the kids, to the children, the new generation. That stop comparing yourself to other people, to your friends, to your family, to celebrities. Everybody's different. And I had to start thinking about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. Let me go through my injuries. My left leg had been patched up. That I got new ligaments in my knee, ligaments from a pig. Okay, I don't ask too many questions, to be honest. I feel a little bit guilty eating bacon sandwiches now, I must admit, but otherwise it's fine. So I've got ligaments from a pig in my knee holding that all together. I've got lack of feeling in it though, lack of movement, sensitivity issues, It tingles a lot. My right leg is the right length, got it to the right length, which is good, and it's got the bone. But I've got sensitive issues there again, lack of feeling, lack of movement in my ankle, and I get a lot of pain when I walk on it or when I use my ankle. So walking and standing I could do, but it were very painful. So again, I had to think about what I could do, what I couldn't do, and I couldn't run anymore. That had been taken away from me, but I could swim. So I started swimming and setting goals in that, how many lengths I could do, etc. How many charity swims I could do. Then I got onto a bike and started cycling, and that was really good. And again, did some charity things on that. And I remember somebody saying, Steve, you're always setting these goals and working towards them. It's a big question. Have you always been like this? Have you always been setting goals and working towards them? And again, this takes me back to my childhood when I loved scouting. Scouting is brilliant with the badges that you get down your arm. And I used to be that scout that used to take the badge book home. I loved the badges. And I'd look through the badge book at home and I'd see the badge that I wanted. And I'd set that as a goal. And then I'd work towards it. And that would be my foundation, I guess, of setting goals and working towards them. So, that kind of reminded me. And I went into the loft to see if I could find some photos of me being in Scouts. And I found this one photo of me when I was 10 and a half years old. And I had Cub of the Year, had a little shield. And on my arm, you could see that I had 3 badges. These are the first 3 badges that I ever got in scouting. And those were swimming, cycling, and running. And just seeing that photo just compelled me to look for new goals, look for new opportunities. But before I came down to the loft, I also had a rummage around. I found this thing, my travelling box, a box of travelling moments, because I travelled around the world. I used to work down the coal pits of Yorkshire when I left school. And as you might have known, the coal pits closed down. I lost my job, so I went travelling. I ended up in Australia, and we got locked in this hostel with the floods came down. I was stuck there with this Japanese guy called Taka. And during that time, I helped him to speak English. And as a thank you gift, he gave me this coin, which I wear around my neck. And this is a 5 yen coin. It's called a Goen. And he said, I'll give you this, Steve, as a thank you gift, but also to bring you good karma. I said, okay. He says, but it will only bring you good karma if you are aware of your vision and you seize opportunities. I was like, okay, whatever you say, that sounds lovely. And he went off to Darwin, and I went on I went into the outback the next day, and I wanted to find this thing called the natural wall of China. It's a lovely granite vein, and the rocks either side of it have eroded away, and I found this rock, and it took me a long time to get there, lots of adversities on the way. My sandals broke, and it was rocky ground. But anyway, I got onto this wall, and I stood there, arms aloft. I was like, wow, yeah, I made it. And I reached into my pocket, and I felt this Goen coin. And it's at that point that I realized what Taka had meant about being aware of my vision and seizing opportunities. So with that in mind, I grabbed this coin from the loft, I put this string around it, and I put it around my neck, and I started wearing it. That was about 2009. I went downstairs, I went onto Google, and I found some more goals, and I found I think it was a triathlon, swimming, cycling, running. I thought, well, I can't run, but I can swim and cycle, maybe go to walk around the run route. I looked down, there's a thing called a para triathlon. So I registered myself as a disabled athlete, and I started training. Now, I hadn't run for 7.5 years, but now I had a goal. So I went for a run for the first time in 7.5 years, and I can remember running. My brain knew what to do, but my legs didn't quite know what to do, and I was forcing them into it. And I'm looking down and just seeing my legs running was just absolutely amazing. To get that feeling back, that enthusiasm, that passion back was just incredible. And I remember smiling, and just as I was running along, saying, wow, I'm running again. This is incredible. But then after the run came the pain. The pain in my ankle was just excruciating. And the next day I was in so much pain that I couldn't run. So again, I thought about what I could do. I could swim. And the day after that, I was still in pain, so I cycled. And the day after that, the pain had gone. So I ran again, because I love to run. So that was my training montage, swimming, cycling, running, all the way up to the first para triathlon, 2009, meeting para triathletes from around the UK. It was the British Championships, so I knew the levels were going to be high. We set off, we did the swim, so in the lake, came out the lake, onto the bike, it's 20 kilometres round the park. Happened to be the same park that I'd done all my rehabilitation, walking on the crutches. So came off the bike, wrapped the bike, and now running. I'm running 5K. The crowd are going crazy. My family's there cheering me on. And as I'm running round the park, I can see those park benches, the park benches that I used to be sat on in pain and in tears. And I thought, that's not me anymore. look at me now, I'm running. This is incredible. So I was running 1K, 2K, 3K, the crowd are cheering, 4K, coming in, you can see the finish line. I run to the finish line, 5K, and I grab on that day the gold medal for my category. It's absolutely amazing. The crowd are going crazy. And I'd achieved my accolade by being aware of my vision and seizing opportunities. So wait for this. I got through, one of the officials comes up to me and says, Steve, you're British champion, well done. He says, would you like to represent Great Britain? And I'm like, hell yeah, I would love to represent Great Britain. And the point is that opportunities around us all the time. You've got to see them, you've got to hear them, you've got to smell them. You've got to do something about them when you get the chance. And I grabbed this opportunity with both hands. I was working full time, I had a family with 2 kids, and now I wanted to be an elite athlete in para triathlon. I was thinking about what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. I was swimming before work, then working. At lunchtime, I was running, and then I'd work in the afternoon, and then I'd get home and I'd be on the bike cycling. I'm not saying I did that every day, but I was always doing as much as I could. I was then setting new goals, become a British champion again, setting my goals to become a European champion, which I achieved in 2011. And then I set my goal for the big one, the World Championships in 2011, going over to China, competing against athletes, para-athletes from around the world, competing against them in the swim, the bike and the run, crossing the finish line on that day and becoming a world champion. It's just the amazing accolade that I achieved going through all of that, not only grabbing that gold medal, but standing on that podium, hearing my national anthem being played and the flag being hoisted for me, representing my country. It's the greatest feeling ever. And all from being, told that I may never walk again. I wanted to prove that surgeon wrong. I wanted to prove the accident wrong. I wanted to make sure the accident hadn't had a detrimental effect on my life. And I did it in the best way possible by becoming champion of the world. So that was in 2011. I carried on my international competition into 2014. And at that point I retired. But yeah, what a rush and what an amazing story. And I love telling the story of how I've achieved.
That is fantastic. It is fantastic on so many levels. I mean, not just the obvious levels, but on so many levels. It's absolutely extraordinary. And now, my next question with that is obviously with regards to the mindset side of things, because I know that your physical rehabilitation was absolutely extensive and tolerating the pain, growing a bone, again, is something you don't hear every day. That is remarkable. But in terms of you mentioned proving people wrong, you mentioned focusing on what you can do, not what you can't do, and so these different things. And the question I'm asking really is, what sort of mentally separates you? Where do you get that strength from to sort of overcome these challenges? Because running again, there must have been times when you doubted, would you ever return to your passion? Would you ever run again? Obviously, would you ever walk again at one point was on the cards as well. So, with all that in mind, how did you remain so positive, and how did you keep going in terms of the perseverance aspect? I mean, there must have been days where you just wanted to, obviously wanted to quit, wanted to give up on it, but you kept going. And obviously you got there to such an amazing level, which I'll come back to in a minute. But first, I do want to touch on the mindset. So what are your thoughts on that side of things, on your mental strength, on, maintaining a positive attitude and not giving up really, and on all that side of things really?
I guess for me, I always say, because people ask me, how do you keep going when things are tough, when there's barriers in front of you and there's pitfalls in front of you and there's things that are literally stopping you? How do you keep going? And I always say, well, you've got to make sure that you're going in the right direction. You've got to make sure you know what you're going for. What is your why? I said at the start of this, my why is to help, inspire, motivate. That's why I'm a motivational speaker now. That's what drives me. That's what gets me out of bed. Going through the rehabilitation, my why was to get out of hospital, to get better, to get my health. I think health can be one of the biggest drives you can possibly ever have. If it's not, you've got to question why. It's bizarre. So my health was there. I wanted to be healthy again. I wanted to stand again. These are natural things that people take for granted. So it's about having the right goal, the gold, as I was called it. What is your gold? What is your goal, your opportunity, your love, your desire, your dream? What is it that will drive you, that will make you, push through those barriers? As an elite athlete, I wanted to be a world champion. Why? For the accolade? Not really, to prove the accident wrong. I wanted to make sure it hadn't had a detrimental effect on me. I was passionate about that. It will not drag me down. I hate being told what I can and can't do. I will make the decision. If somebody says you can't do something, or I don't think you can do that, that gets me really kind of riled up. So using that as a fuel, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being angry as long as you use that anger in the right way. I don't think there's anything wrong with being impatient. If you're impatient about something, use that. Do something now. If you're impatient about it, get on with it then. If you're angry about something, then use that anger to fuel you. So it's about getting the right goal and working towards that. And you'll be amazed at what mindset you have. If you don't really want to do it, you probably won't do it. But if you do want to do it, then that's great. So how do you find the right goal, your gold? And I do workshops on this, and it's all very much about, you can go for the pleasure, you can go for the self-actualization. But you talked about, how do you keep going? And I think that's very much about knowing where you are on the wave of resilience, which is what I talk about. Another one of my workshops is the wave of resilience. Now, the wave of resilience, you start like going through life, I guess. You have that adversity. And it hits you, and you have that shock. And we talked about coronavirus, about how you went into shock for a couple of days. Everybody has that with adversity. It might be for a second or two, it might be a day or a week. You have the shock after adversity, you have the denial, as in surely not, I can't believe it, denial. Okay, then sadly, you'll have the anger, which will bring you down. You will be angry about the situation. Now, as you come down on that anger, you will do the sharing. The sharing is when you do the moaning, the groaning. It might be on social media, but it might be expressing. So for me, I did a lot of my expression through writing poetry in hospital. I'm not a poet, but I needed to get something out of me. I even drew pictures of how I felt, also what I wanted to work towards. I was sharing, talking to people as well. Tears is sharing. So anger, sharing, that will bring you all the way down to rock bottom. Now, rock bottom, that's a sad place. That's a dark place, and nobody wants to be there. And sometimes if it's a small adversity, it might be that you're just sulking for a little bit, just sulking. Bigger adversities, then it might lead to depression, which is really bad. Now, how long you stay on this rock bottom, nobody can say. Depends on the adversity, depends on what kind of person you are, depends on the tools that you use. Because, and again, these are tools that I share in my workshop, but after the rock bottom is the next phase, and that's acceptance. You need to accept the situation. You need to know what's happened, where you are, what you're going to do, because after acceptance is action. That's where the fun starts. That's when you can start doing something about it. That's when you can use all that anger that's built up inside you to take action and do something about it. That will lift you up. That will lift you up, after acceptance into action, and then onto self-actualization. Now, if you do this right, if you use the right tools, your self-actualization will actually be higher than where you started. What does that say? That kind of says that the adversities are good. It's called post-traumatic. You might have heard of PTSD, post-traumatic disorder. You can have post-traumatic growth. And it is a thing that people that have been through adversity can actually end up higher. In a way, that's what I've done. I've come to a higher plane. And not only that, if you haven't got adversity, if you've got no adversity, good for you. I'm very pleased for you. But you won't get higher. So how do you get higher? You push yourself outside your comfort zone. That's horrible. That's scary. That's why it's out of your comfort zone. But that's what you need to do to get to a higher plane. If you don't want to get to a higher plane, fine. Just go through life. I know what's it called, flatlining, and you just do nothing.
Yeah.
And that frustrates me. When I say, how's your job? It's okay. How's your work? It's okay. How's your relationship? It's okay. Really? Okay? Just okay. And what a shame. Shouldn't life be better than that? Shouldn't it be about being fabulous, fantastic, awesome? I've been there. I've been world champion. That's awesome. So I know what it likes. I know what it feels. I want to help people to experience the happiness and the fulfillment of achieving their true life goals. So it's about those people finding what those goals are, being inspired, being motivated to keep going through the wave of resilience, coming out the other end, finding their self-actualization, whatever that might be. It might be sports, it might be academics, it might be music, it could be anything. Find out what that thing is. Spend some time finding out what that is, and then start working towards it. And that will take you on that journey. And that's the biggest advice that I can give.
Fantastic. It is absolutely fantastic advice for people. And obviously you've been there and done it. I mean, that goes without saying. But it is just so profound. I mean, even the element of, the gratitude of, these things should be better than just flat. I've had the same conversation with people. It's amazing. Now, another aspect of this is obviously you sort of touched on winning the world title and how it felt. And you mentioned that, and we moved through it. But it is one of those things where obviously, when I interview different world champions, sometimes they say, you just can't put it into words and it's something you have to be there. I'm sure that's true. Sometimes they can describe it in a way and things like that. But you touched on it, and I'd just like to go back there, really, because it's one of those things that obviously after everything you've been through, after people, after years of recovery and the pain of running and people writing you off, and obviously I don't know what type of support network you had, but I mean that side can't have been easy either. But you got there, and it it all became real, it all became true. So I'd like to just talk a little bit more about your experience of winning the world titles. I don't really have one specific question about it, so I'm not really narrowing it into, oh, let's talk about this, but just because obviously you're the one that had the experience in that sense. And I think anything I say that says, oh, it should be like this, would actually take away from the description of the experience. So I'm going to turn that over to you to sort of describe, some of what went through your mind. Like I said, you touched on it earlier. So let's go back there and talk about what you felt when you won the world title for the first time.
I think it's just, as I was running along on the 5K, I knew the American and the French guy, they were chasing me down. But after like 4K, you've got 1K left. I'm pretty sure I'm going to win this unless something disastrous happens. And you start smiling a little bit. You think, Steve, just concentrate. And you hear the crowd cheering you on, shouting your name. And I can't help but smile. I smile a lot anyway. People always, call me the smiler when I'm running. I do that on purpose because it helps me going. It lifts my mood up, lifts my legs up, makes me go fast. But I also realize that if I'm smiling, I can't breathe. So as I'm running along, it's not good to smile. So I have to say, Steve, concentrate. And coming around the final corner, the crowd going wild, big smiling, looking at the finish line, my goal, my dream, just working towards it and pushing myself, just concentrating on that and crossing the finish line, just to say, I've done it, just the massive relief of everything that's built up towards it. Now that was an amazing feeling, but let me blend in the other world championships that I won. So without giving too much away, the New Zealand one, there was a lot going on that year. That's in 2012. You talk about my support network, which was not brilliant on that time. There were other competitors that I was struggling to beat. There were the conditions of the wind and the rain and everything like that. And, crossing the finish line in 2012 to become the world champion for the second year running was amazing. And there's a great photo of me going, yes, and with the banner. But straight after that, I was in tears, absolute tears, because it all caught up with me. I remember it was raining and I was just looking up at the sky and the rain falling down on me. And the first person I phoned was my mum. I was in New Zealand, I think it was like 4:00 in the morning or something, but I just needed to speak to her, tell her that I'd won, and just share with her really, because I was in so much, I think I was upset about everything I'd been to. I'd sacrificed a lot to get there and to win that title. And it all came flooding out then. The thing is, when you compete at something at that level, that's a high. And after the high, there's always got to be a low. You just don't know when it's going to kick in. And then maybe the low kicked in straight away as soon as I crossed the finish line. I'd literally given everything I was spent. Let me just fast forward on to 2013. The World Championships were in London. And again, we had the rivalry thing going on. I pushed it and blitzed it and crossed the finish line. There's a photo of me punched in the air in triumph because I'd achieved silver medal. And to me, that was the best that I could do on that day. I missed out the World Championships by 30 seconds. And people said, wow, are you not gutted? I said, no, you can look at the photo. I'm clearly very happy. Why? Because on that day, I'd been the best that I could be. And that is exactly what success is all about. So we talk about how did I feel? What is success? What is the gold medal? Success is about being the best that you can be. And if you're the best that you can be, then you should have no regrets. If you've got regrets, then you're not the best that you can be. I had no regrets in 2013. My training, my swimming, my cycling, my running, my nutrition, my mindset, my yoga, my tai chi, my warming up, my warming down, my transition. On the day, the swim, the bike, the run, everything was perfect. I couldn't have gone any faster. I couldn't have trained any more. And so that's why the result is the result. Could I have gone 30 seconds faster on the day? No, I couldn't. I was flat out. You've got to trust me on that. So that's why I was happy with the result. And that's important in all things that you do. That's, again, why I talk to students about their upcoming exams. get to that start line with no regrets. You get to the start line, as in your exam, and say, oh, I wish I'd revised more. Then you're a muppet, aren't you? It's like me getting to the start line and saying, oh, I wish I'd done more training. It's too late. You say that 3 months before and do something about it, absolutely. But don't start moaning about it when you're there. So make sure that when you get to that start line, you are going to be able to say, bring it on. I've got no regrets. It might not be an exam. It might be an interview that you're going for. It might be speaking to your most important client. Have you done the research? Do the research. Make sure you're speaking to the client with no regrets. For me now, I live each day with no regrets. When my head hits the pillow, I say to myself, any regrets today? Has it been a good day? Or did I get distracted by television or social media? Or did I drink too many glasses of wine? I was only going to have one, I had 2, 3. Or, have I got any regrets? And I'm not saying I get it right every single day, but the days that I do get it right, they're the best days. The days when I can say, wow, it's been an awesome day. I sent that email off. I made that phone call. I spoke to my friend. I spoke to my mum. I did my fitness thing, did my wellness thing. It's been a good day. No regrets. And only you can answer that. Because, if I was going to do loads of work, and instead of spending time doing the work, I spent it with my son and my daughter. Is that good? Is that bad? I think that's good, but only I can answer that. So you've got to do that. Does that answer how I feel crossing the finish line to become a world champion? I guess it mingled into all of those. It's about crossing the line with no regrets. All the hard work I put in for my first world championships in 2011. And I don't mean just the training leading up to the world championships. I guess I'm talking about stretching my leg out, doing my rehabilitation, walking around the park, gritting my teeth. I went to the dentist at one point because I thought I was wearing my teeth down because of the amount of pain, I was grinding them down. And the dentist kind of laughed at me and said, no, Mr. Judge, it will be fine. He didn't understand how much pain I was going through. That's why I was concerned. But all of that, you've got the no regrets. When you get that gold medal, when you get that accolade, that thing that you've been working towards, just immense feeling of just a relief. It's almost like a relief. I think that's the thing, because you've built it up inside your head. You've pushed yourself so hard. Just doing it, finishing that exam, finishing that race, finishing that interview, putting the phone down after speaking to your clients and going, oh, that was good. No regrets. Not, oh, I should have done this or should have done that. So I think that's how I felt. Almost relief.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. You know what? I'm really, really glad that you covered that, because the no regrets element was actually something I was going to touch on later on. So I'm really glad that because it was something I picked up on as something you say, and I thought, that's fantastic. Because, it's a little off topic this is, but even, working with different athletes myself, it's something you do see where sometimes they don't always try their best, and the regret. I've seen that side of it, and then I've seen the other side of it actually in action of what you're saying, and it's a really, really profound message, not just in sports, but in, as you say, in any aspect of life. So, and that's obviously a really good insight into winning the world title. So moving on from there, now I'd like to talk about something else, which is the publication of your book. Now, what interests me about that is a few different things, and again, I'm going to try and bring them together, because I'd imagine that writing a book is a healing process, because you touched on writing poetry earlier, and that sort of getting things out. So maybe that comes into it. I don't know, but again, it's not really one question of what was this, but the experience of writing out that. I suppose you probably looked at it and to some extent maybe realized how far you'd come. There's all these different elements of what it's actually like to, one, write your life story down, and two, actually see it in print, actually see it sort of inspiring other people, actually see your life in a book format. Now, I know that's sort of a double-sided question of what it was like to write it and then what it was like to actually see it in print. But again, I'd like your thoughts on both of those things, because it's an amazing accomplishment. I'd imagine it's very satisfying. I hope so, given everything that you've been through. But once again, I'm not going to narrow it down too much. In your own words, what was it like writing the book, and what was it like actually seeing it in print?
Yeah, see, you're right, it's an amazing accomplishment, and I big myself up, and all authors out there. There's a lot of people that talk about writing a book one day, and they don't take the action. So the world that I work in now as a professional speaker, there's a lot of speakers that have got books, and I've told my story on the stage, and they said, Steve, that's an amazing story. Have you got a book? And I'm like, I haven't got a book. They said, you should write a book. I said, I can't write a book. They said, you need to write a book. You're a speaker. You've got a good story. Write a book. I said, okay, I'll write a book. So that's what I needed to do. I set that as a goal. I talk about my goal. And it took a couple of years, because it's a big thing. It's a big thing writing a book. And when I'm on the stage, I think what drove me towards it in the end to get this goal of writing a book was the emotion side. You always need the emotion side. Why are you doing this? Why have you got this goal? If you want to earn lots of money, why? What's the money for? If you want to write a book, why? Why do you want to write a book? So when I'm on the stage and I share my story, that's like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, they get a watered down version of it, a bit like today on the podcast. And it kind of frustrated me a little bit that people weren't getting the whole story. I said, you don't really know anything really, you know a little bit about it. I've told all the good bits, but what about all the rest of it? So I thought, I need to write a book. I need to get it all out there. So everybody says, dead easy to write a book. Just write a book, upload it, Amazon, publish it, job done, bish, bash, bosh. So I thought, okay. So I started writing a book. I'm going to do a little typewriter. And I thought, I haven't a clue what I'm doing. I'm way out of my comfort zone. I need some help. So it's about asking for help. Found some book coaches. They helped me. Obviously, you know, they cost, but they held my hand through the whole process. And that's what I needed. And going through the process is what you're asking about writing my book. Going back, it was so difficult because it's amazing how much the brain forgets. It remembers all the good bits, it deletes all the bad stuff. In fact, it doesn't delete them, it locks them up. It puts them like a treasure chest and it buries them deep, deep down in the ground and buries lots of earth on top of it. So what I had to do was I had to dig down and find out what those negative things were, those negative memories. And opening them up was like a Pandora's box. Having, you know, putting myself through the pain that I was going through with the cage. I talk about extending the cage, but I don't talk about it in great depth. I had to now. I'm writing a book on it. I had to put my heart and emotions into it. I realized through writing the book, I became a writer. So instead of saying I was in pain, I had to write things like the tears rolled down my face as I twisted the bolts. That explains how I felt. Instead of saying I was happy, I wrote the smile spread across my face. So again, you're getting an image of what I was actually going through. Now to do that, I had to put myself in the time, the place, and take myself back in time almost. That's hard. The happy times was great fun, but the hard times was really hard. And not only took myself back there to remember it, but then take myself over to the keyboard and start typing it as tears were literally rolling down my face, reliving the painful memories, the pain, the emotions, the heartbreaks, and putting it all into the book. But again, this is what I needed to do. If I want this book to be the book that I really wanted, that my goals, people to understand what I went through, then that's what I've got to do, the highs and the lows. So it was a traumatic period doing that. And my coach has said, be careful. Now, like a warning, it's like, why? They said, when you take yourself back to these periods, you will feel sad, you will feel low. Make sure that when you finish typing for that day, you tell yourself that that's in the past and that now you're better. Now this is the present day and you're happy. Remember that. Go for a walk. Look at the blue sky. You know, look at happy things. Think about happy thoughts. And it's so true. You need to do that. You need to be realistic about what you're putting your brain through because you are reliving those horrible parts that generally people hide away, and to wrench them all out and put them in a book. So I did that and it took a long time and I was very committed with it. Sometimes I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get 3 hours of typing in because I was doing this while juggling with my kids and my business and writing a book at the same time. And you asked about how did it make me feel and also putting the things in the book. So you're right, I did put some of my poetry. I got my book. I keep looking at my book. My book's here. And my book's called Don't Lean on Your Excuses. And it says, a world champion's courageous story that inspires living with no regrets. Living with no regrets. Inside here, I've split it up. So we've got like a few pictures. We've got poems in there. We've got prose. We've got feelings. We've got diary entries. We've at the front, because music, different subject altogether, music. We could talk for hours on music. Music has been a real lifeline for me. Really powerful, really important throughout my childhood, my rehabilitation, elite athlete. So obviously there's a playlist in here of the tunes that I use to get me through every year, every chapter. So you can knock yourself out, you can play the tunes while you're reading it. Some of them are cheesy, Chesney Hawkes, etc. Some of them are AC/DC, some of them are classical. Enya, I think, is in there. It's a real mixture. Don't judge me on my music, please, because it helped me. So I've got no qualms about it. They helped me get through my life. So yeah, there's loads in there. And I think what's good about that is it splits the book out. It's not just loads and loads of text and story. It's a bit of everything, because that's what I learned as well. It's my book. I can do what I want. And I think I've learned that as a business owner, that I can be creative. my book can be creative as long as it represents me. And so I'm really proud. I have absolutely no regrets with my book, and that's how it should be when it's finished. And hopefully I hold that on for, the next 10, 20 years. Hopefully I'm always proud of my book, because I think the more people that read it, the better. They get a full flow of what the book's all about and my journey.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah, it's good to cover because it is, and it's, I don't know, you know how in a book it's sort of in a chapter, and I sort of see that as it must have been, the completion almost of a chapter in your life, and it's just absolutely remarkable. Now, I'd like to get to the speaking side of things. I would like to get to that speaking coaching. Obviously, that's something you're incredibly passionate about. Like I said earlier, your passion is tangible. It's absolutely amazing sort of vibe, I suppose, for want of a better word, that comes over. Now, one of the things that that really interests me about your speaking and about that is you've touched on the motivation of your 3 key points. You've touched on that. We've touched on a little bit, but I'd like to talk about a slightly more emotional side of it, of how it feels when you're coaching someone and you're sort of seeing them make progress, whatever that may be for that person, when you're seeing them take those steps towards living with no regrets, even when you're just seeing them. I mean, what it must be like to be on stage and just see the looks on their faces, and even in the moment, which is another thing that you've touched on that is amazing, is obviously being grateful for every moment, every day, that type of thing. So yeah, once again, and this is obviously a theme today, which I did expect of not having sort of narrow questions about things. But yeah, I mean, in your own words, being on stage, inspiring people, seeing them progress, it must be incredibly rewarding, incredibly fulfilling. I imagine it certainly seems that way. And you mentioned about smiling. I mean, you certainly seem very happy on stage. But yeah, so there's that side of it, of seeing them progress. And I'm going to double side this a little bit more, because as you seem okay with that, is when you're on stage, was it a new challenge? Was it a new, were you out of your comfort zone getting on stage? So those are, again, it's a little double-sided, so forgive me for that, please, but it's we've in your own words on your speaking experiences, Steve.
So when I retired as an international athlete, and I worked for the Scout Association. To be honest, I went back as a Scout leader. I'm now a Cub Scout leader, so giving new fun, challenge and adventure to the new generation, which I love doing. And that, my story is based around Scouts with the badges on the arm, now giving the badges out to new kids, which is amazing. But I worked for the Scout Association, and my contract came to an end, and they said, Steve, what are you going to do now? And I've done a few talks and stuff like that for schools and assemblies. And I stood there like a Superman pose. And I remember saying, I am going to be a motivational speaker. And they're like, wow, Steve, that's amazing. How are you going to do that? And I was like, still there. And I was like, I haven't got a clue. I have no clue. I don't know how I'm going to do it. But by then I'd learned that if you've got a goal that you're passionate about, that you really want to achieve, you'll find a way. We've talked about this already. I really wanted to be a speaker. I really wanted to motivate. I got a buzz. I'm confident on the stage. People have said, what an amazing story. You're amazing. This is great. I said, right, let's see if I can do this as a business, because I'd heard that there's people out there just speak for business. So I found this thing called the PSA, Professional Speaking Association. There's one in Yorkshire. I went there as a newbie. And I went there and they said, Steve, we would love you to join us. If you join in your first year, you can do this speaking competition. I said, oh, did you say a competition? Because I'm a bit competitive, I like that. So they said, yeah, speaking competition, 5 minutes. You have no PowerPoint. You will be judged on your appearance, on your speaking ability, on your personality, on your story, and all of this. And you've got to do it in 5 minutes, no more. You can do it less if you want. But if you go over time, you'll get judged on that and you'll lose points. I'm like, wow, that makes me nervous now. I said, count me in. So I tell you why I wanted to do it, because if you got through the Yorkshire region, you went on to the semi-finals, and after that, you got onto the main stage of the conference, the UK conference. That means I would be presenting in front of the top speakers of the UK in my first year. That's why I wanted to be. So I try and cut this down as short as possible, but I did the competition. I rehearsed, of course. I presented in front of it, and in Yorkshire I didn't win, and I was absolutely gutted, because the thing is, people that told me that I was good before that were people that see me on the stage. Oh, you're so brave being a speaker. My mum said I was amazing. Okay, but speakers, They're more truthful. Speakers will, give you proper feedback. They said, it's a great story, Steve, but you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you did this wrong, you could do this better. I'm like, but then I saw this as feedback, and feedback is good. I said, tell me more, because I really want to do this. I took all the information. At that time, I could go to another region. I went up to Newcastle, competed there 2 months later, with all this new feedback, new rehearsals, and I won. I'd now got through. I went down to the same point, but before I left there, I said, people said, you've won, you're amazing. I said, I don't want to hear that. What can I do that make me better? I need the feedback. I need to be better. I want to get to that final stage. So they told me the feedback. From that, I went to the semi-finals. I got through the semi-finals. That's just 5 people left in the finals. Again, I got feedback from there. I went to the finals. I didn't win the thing, but I was there. I was on the main stage in my first year in front of the top speakers of the UK. And I learned so much in that 6 months period about how difficult it is to be a speaker. It is not about going on a stage and talking about your story. You can do that if you want, but you won't be memorable. You might be in the wrong way. You won't be entertaining. There's so many technicalities. And this is why I love being a speaker coach now, because I believe that every person's got a story inside them. And if they want to share that story, I want to help them in the best way possible. And there's so much to learn. Which side of the stage you stand, the highs, the lows, the laughter, the comedy, the sighs of relief. You've got to do some acting in it as well. I don't really like the acting bit, but you've got to do that because it's entertainment. You've got to do the rollback, which is a comedy term. You've got to do some props. What props are you going to do? If you're going to do some slides, and what slides are you going to have? Not too many, not too few. There's so many technicalities, and now I know all of that, and I'm still learning. And I think I learn all the time from other speakers that I aspire to be like, or that inspire me. I watch comedy. Comedy is all entertainment. I'm an entertainer, like it or not. One of the things I've got to do is I've got to become a stand-up comedian. I don't want to become a stand-up comedian, but the skills involved in becoming a stand-up comedian will help me to become a speaker. So I've got to go to some dark and dingy comedy club and do a 5-minute set at some point and do a comedy set. And that'll be way out my comfort zone. But that's my kind of training. In my business, that counts as training. That counts as self-development. Okay, bring it on. I'll do that. And that'll help me on the stage. So then passing that on to people who want to become a speaker is amazing. What feeling does it give me? Immense feeling. In my presentations, in my audience, they laugh, they cry, and they applaud. Standing ovation at the end. You can't get much better than that. That means you've got the highs and lows right. You've got everything right. They contact me afterwards saying that I've inspired them to achieve this, achieve that, to achieve in business, to achieve in their sport accolades, to achieve in exams because of me, because of my story and my storytelling. It's not just a story, it's everything involved in it. Sometimes I only get 20 minutes or 25 minutes to get the story into that with as much enthusiasm. It's difficult, but I come across with lots of energy and people love that. They can see the authenticity. Authenticity is massive. I feel like I'm going off here with a speaking coaching session, but authenticity is so important. You should be exactly on the stage who you are off the stage. If you're a different person, you'll get found out, basically. If you put on a person on the stage, they'll see through you. So you've got to put your heart on your sleeve, and that is difficult, especially if you do it a lot, because after a while you feel like you come a bit mundane to it. But when I'm talking about twisting the bolts on my cage, when I'm talking about falling over on my crutches, when I'm talking about my brother, my sister, my mum come to my hospital bed, that still guts me. It guts me what I put them through. And by sharing that on a stage, people can see that. People can see that it hurts me. But that's what I need to do. I need to share the things that hurt me so that it can inspire them. And that's a difficult thing to do. But that's what I want to do. Like I said, my goal is to help, inspire, motivate. So how can I do that the most? And once I've done that to the best of my ability, get the feedback. Especially when you've got people in the audience that you can trust. How can I make it better? I think my 45-minute keynote is perfect now. I've had it for a couple of years. It's brilliant. But I'm sure it will be adjusted over the next couple of months and years. It will get better and better and better. And I think I like that. There's continuous improvement. So yeah, it's an amazing feeling doing all of that. And that's one thing I've missed on the Zoom calls is I missed the mingling afterwards. You come off the stage and you go and mingle, you go and have tea, coffee and croissants and you talk to the people and you get feedback from them and that's really nice. On the Zoom call, I finish my keynote, few questions and answers, click end and I disappear. And that's the worst thing about this, doing everything online. So I can't wait to get on the stage in front of the audiences. I always say I'll do like 50 people, 100 people, but why not 1,000? Why not 10,000? Just fill the room. It's the same story. Just give me the audience and I'll do it. And I will inspire as many people as possible. That's what I want to do. And that's the kind of buzz and the feeling that I get. So hopefully that answers your questions in a roundabout way.
Absolutely. Do you know what, Steve? It answers my questions in a much better way. I mean, I knew it would be a good answer, but I mean, honestly, some of the stuff that we've talked about here, because, really, I had down to sort of mention about the future, mention about things, but to be honest, you've covered that because your passion, again, I know I keep saying that, but it comes over. But more than that, I mean, the concept of the continual improvement, absolutely love that. I absolutely love it because so many people reach a high point and they think that they sort of plateau there, they sort of stop at that point, and obviously life doesn't stop. I mean, life goes on, so you've got to be continually improving. So I absolutely love that message. I mean, really, that's my last question, because obviously, you've touched on the future, so I'm happy with that. We've had absolutely amazing content from yourself, everything you've said. I mean, there's so many things that you've answered, things without me even asking them. You've shared some absolutely amazing wisdom for people, and like I said to you, I mean, that is really the aim of what I sort of wanted to create with this is that. Now the last thing I'm going to say is, obviously, I like to drop this in there. Well, there's two things, actually, two small things. One is, do you have anything extra that you would like, talking about no regrets now? Is there anything that you're holding on to? Anything you'd like to say to people watching? Anything at all? If not, I mean, obviously no obligation to say anything, but maybe, you wanted to say something to the viewers, or I like to check in case there's anything that's
I think there's something. I think there's two things. One, I'll say a few words, but without sounding like I'm selling from the stage. Get the book. It's all in the book. So the book, let me get the book. The book is brilliant because everything's in there. We've been talking for nearly 50 minutes or so, and that's great content. There's more in the book, and if you like what you've heard, you're going to like even more here. And also the poems and the prose and the diary entries and the music, it's all good. So that's one thing I'd say if you do want more. But the second thing I want to say is the summing up, that everybody that's listened to this, they've all got goals. Find out what your goal is. What's your goal? And make sure that you really believe in that and that you want it with a passion. What's your emotion behind it? Because on your journey, there's going to be times when you feel like you're failing. And there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. There's going to be times when I guess you're going to struggle to achieve the goal, but don't change the goal. Change the plan. There's going to be times when there's barriers in front of you. You've got to see those barriers as excuses. And to get through those excuses, you've got to turn those excuses into challenges. Don't lean on your excuses. The biggest message that I can give is to always be the best that you can be in every single thing that you do. Because if you do that, I believe that every single person can achieve their goals. And if you do that, then you'll have no regrets. And I think that sums it all up very nicely.
Incredible, absolutely incredible. It's honestly, Steve, I'm so grateful for you sort of sharing, and I know there's loads more. So just to drop that in, I mean, for anyone watching this, obviously get the book, absolutely 110%. You can contact Steve.
And if you can buy the book off Amazon, or you can contact me and I can do a nice signed copy, which is always nice. So yeah, feel free, whatever is easier.
Marvelous. Okay. Well, it's wonderful. I mean, it's one of those things where I know I keep going on about this, but even when you mention things like the new generation and things, that's another thing. Wonderful, because obviously people see so many, I don't know how to put this because it's not really politically correct, but there's so many people sort of in the public eye and things like that are regarded as successful that personally I don't really regard as necessarily successful. Maybe they got money, maybe they got influence, but whether it's actual success, I'm not convinced. And that's controversial to say, but then I don't really do politically correct, so I'm going to throw that in there. Obviously, today you've shown people what real success is, what it really is, and I think probably that's the most profound thing at all. It's hard to pick one thing that's the most profound thing, but that's one thing that's really struck me, and I'll personally take away from this. So
that's really good, and I want people to listen to my story, hear my story, and for them to think, because I didn't choose this journey, things happened to me, but I want people to see that if I can do it, then they can do it, and I think that's really important for them to understand that.
Absolutely. Well, like I said at the beginning, I'm so grateful for your time, and I know it's gone on a bit longer than what we thought, but I'm so grateful for your time. So thank you very much for that, Steve.
Okay, no problem. Thank you for the opportunity. I love it.
Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.